first item on the agenda is the appointment of Ms. Dorothy Parker to one of our boards. So,
objection.
Then we'll start with you.
Wow.
Ms. Parker, did you want to address the legislative committee, or do you have any comments that you'd like to make?
Just introduce yourself.
Just introducing yourself, and you come up to. We won't bite you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dorothy Parker. I'm a lifelong resident of Benton Harbor. I wanted to join the commission because I feel that if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And I always want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the problem. I've never had housing issues, but there are people who do, and they deserve to have decent, affordable housing just like everyone else. And thank you for considering my application.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Ms. Parker, thank you for stepping up and volunteering. I already see you active in the community already, so I know you already have a passion for the city and what's going on, what's happening in the city. So I hope everything goes well and that we can pass this through. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. We will forward this to the whole commission, and welcome to the Benton Harbor Housing Commission.
All right, I retract my objection. No. Thank you, Madam Chair, chairpersons, Commissioner Isom. Start with kind of low-hanging fruit first. I believe it's low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging, please. Excuse me, Chair.
Oh, you know
what did you say?
Low-hanging fruit. Fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Low-hanging fruit.
He said he'll start with the low-hanging fruit. He was making a comment about.
You heard that before?
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff is easy, just grab it. So the easy stuff.
I remember.
Yeah, so we're gonna start with low-hanging fruit here.
You have to go over there.
I got it.
No, it's on. It is on.
Oh, there we go. All right, so kind of the two big things I got for today is the open burn ordinance. The reason we're bringing that to you today to consider, to hopefully ultimately go on to the full commission, is that the current ordinance on burning as it is absolutely extremely confusing. It basically says thou shalt not burn, comma, but if you do burn, do it this way. So I'm going to read it to you so you can see. So it says, this is 4-1, and it's also pretty short. No person shall cause or allow the emission of dense smoke or the ingredients thereof into the atmosphere within the corporate limits of the city from any building, premise, or machine whatsoever. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It's pretty simple. Provided, however, that the emissions of that smoke or the ingredients thereof for a period of 20 minutes in any hour, once every 24 hours, when a new fire is being kindled and then under a coal boiler or coal furnace, etc., etc. So it says you should not burn. If you do burn, you can only burn 20 minutes of every hour, every 24 hours. That's crazy. So we had a situation where one of our code compliance officers had cited somebody for burning in his yard. That person thought, under his interpretation, that he was able to burn according to state statute because he had a container with a cover, which the state ordinance, state statute speaks to. Real generally, he kind of applied it, and he was cited under this ordinance. So the gentleman had filed a complaint, said he didn't think that was necessarily fair because he was doing what he thought was compliant with the state statute, And he says, or even reading your own ordinance, it says, don't burn, but if you do burn. So I thought out of fairness, we had that ticket thrown out, and part of our agreement would be I'd bring it before the commission to consider changes or upgrading to the ordinance. So what I would propose, from a public safety perspective, is that we have a no burn ordinance, period. So what the state statute actually says, and it's in, let me show that real quick. The state statute basically says that no open burning, can you see this? I know it's real tough. Maybe lights might help. Excuse me. State statute is pretty clear. It says the open burning of grass clippings or leaves is prohibited in any municipality having a population of 7,500 or more, which we do, unless specifically authorized by local ordinances. So I think what the statute says is we can't allow burning if we so choose to. I'm saying I don't think we should for many reasons. One of the main is that we have such a vast ravine system that is literally covered with dead leaves and twigs and branches. The average person doesn't think about those as fuel, but as firefighters, those are fuel. And you will also have homes who people don't rake their leaves on a regular basis. That's fuel on the ground. So you can, have a situation where something catches on fire, the grass catches on fire, and that goes down the ravine like a wick. And now we have a humongous ravine fire. So we don't think that burning in the city should be allowable at all, because, and then in the residential neighborhoods, those that aren't on ravines are kind of close together. And you may have seen us when we fight fires, when we go there, one of the first things we check is what we call a secondary exposure to make sure that doesn't catch fire also. And a lot of times they do get damage from heat. So we are proposing that the commission would entertain a no burning ordinance at all in the city and remove all question. So here, what I did was, this comes from, I made the sections kind of fit how our ordinance reads, and if this goes further, I'm sure Madam Clerk will fix it to how she wants it. But the state of Michigan DEQ gave templates that municipalities could use. So this kind of comes from a template and some of the, very little bit of what we have existing. So basically, the first part, the purpose, the applicability, severability, I believe, is probably just fancy lawyer speak. Then we have definitions, which we define open burning, outdoor burning, refuse, natural waste, which I think, again, that could be at the review of the attorney, that that is, to me, it simplifies it. Anything that's grass, leaves, that's natural. Stumps, branches, limbs. Refuse, construction material. Obviously, construction material is construction material. 2x4s, asphalt, shingles, etc. So what I'm proposing is to break it down generally. And again, these sections are just a proposal. It might be better or different from what the clerk would change to, if that would be her pleasure. Basically, general prohibition on open and outdoor burning. Outdoor burning of any kind is prohibited in the city of Benton Harbor, period. Then we go on, actually just kind of hits every definition. Open burning of refuse. That's basically like people's personal trash. Open burning of refuse is prohibited within the city of Benton Harbor. Open burning of construction material and demolition waste is strictly prohibited in the city of Benton Harbor. You kind of get the theme. Then we got 4.10 liability. Again, I think that's a lawyer speaking thing. Right of entry, this speaks to, because our current ordinance does not, fire chief and the code compliance officer or designee are authorized to enforce the provisions of this ordinance, which this doesn't, I don't think, speaks to. And then we have 4.12, what I think the current penalties are. I think as written, I think I got these from the state standard. This comes from the state fee structure. So I guess I would open it up to any questions or discussions. We like it, we don't like it. If we don't like this fee structure, we do like it. If we would change it, what we would change it to, and I can make those changes right now if that's what we wanna do.
I have a question about B, open burning.
Mhm.
Outdoor burning means, open burnings of campfires or the burning in outdoor wood furnaces, chimney, patio warmers, or any other portable wood burning device for outdoor recreation or heating.
Mhm.
So what about people who have those outdoor fire pits?
No.
What?
Now, you can say yes, I'm saying no, because that would be, that's outdoor burning. So, yeah, if people have a pit and it's covered properly, I think we would need to enumerate that in here if we were to make that, take it out and add that. My only fear with that would be, again, the proximity of houses, the level of wild areas that we have. If something goes up, it can go up. So,
I would say the campfire piece, I agree. I don't think you should be building a campfire in the city. We should, but in terms of patio, fire pits, if they're covered, I mean, if we want to make it so that the rules say specifically how they need to look, but I think there are enough responsible people to be able to do that without causing a fire. But absolutely campfires, and I don't know if the committee has any other input that they want to give on that, but campfires and that kind of thing, I would agree.
So I would say we will do the will of the committee and ultimately what the commission wants to do. I have no problem with that because, again, this came from a template, and they have basically it's this or. You can say no. If we do have it, then this is what we would suggest. So we can write that in there. Hopefully, people will be smart enough to not to burn their house up like they do with turkey fryers. And there's another part of this that's not really enumerated as a section is violators shall pay costs which may include all expenses direct or indirect which the city has incurred in the connection of municipal infraction, da-da-da. So, I mean, we can, if they catch their porch on fire, then they'd have to pay for it if we had to put this in our ordinance. So am I hearing we want to have?
I would agree with that as well. I was thinking that same thing about growing up here. That was just kind of a part of the culture for a lot of people, so it would be a shame to take that away.
Okay, so we're saying no campfires.
No campfires, but fire pits.
Fire
Mhm.
pits.
Okay.
Covered.
Covered.
That's all it is.
Covered fires. Attorney Ryan, you good with that?
Well, I was also thinking if we're going to allow fire pits, you could include some language that, you know, they can't be placed, you know, no more than,
Proximity.
15 feet away from the
Yeah.
property line or in 5 feet away from the house,
Okay.
that sort of thing, or any improvements. That might help with protecting the neighbor in the house.
Okay. Or,
You know,
They have to have extinguishing
any-
materials nearby and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
and you might try maybe talk about limiting the size, I don't know, of the pit.
okay, so would the next thing be make the changes, send them, do we have to come back here, or we just send them to the clerk for her to send out to the commission to get a consensus on what they want? How would that work, Mr. Watson?
I would suggest that you give, I mean, it's not, this is the time of season that we're not really talking about burning as much. And we have some time. I would give it another glance over and bring it back one time and then ask the commission to then vote on it.
Okay.
Make the corrections and whatever necessary modifications.
Okay.
That makes it a little bit easier, kind of clean.
Okay.
And just identify what the changes are. Red lighted, identify what the changes are so you don't have to rehash the whole ordinance modification.
So my last question was going to be, to you and Madam Clerk, is, in essence, we're kind of just throwing out 4 as is and making a new 4. So what would that be, a repealing? Is that a?
We'll work that one out. It could be a revision, it could be a repealing. I think there are some things that are in that may need to stay,
Okay.
but we just need to go through and make sure if it's a revision or a repeal.
Okay.
Mr. Adams.
Yes, Madam Chair. I guess my question would be, is that totally no burning means no burning, and that excludes the high school when they want to do a barn fire, any of that, so that's excluded.
Most of the time, people get a special permit.
Oh,
to
no,
do
that's
those
what I'm
kinds of
talking about. No special permits, I mean, no burning means no burning.
Right.
And I asked that question because as I was riding along, cause I was going to ask the questions along Ross. If we could get something, and I was looking at the open field, if we could go along there and gather all that trash and stuff and put it in that one location right there, and if some fire truck or something be close by, that we could actually burn that stuff.
That'd be the worst thing to do, A, in that location, because it's terrible, and B, state law says that a municipality cannot burn themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it excludes that, but I was just thinking of how to just clean it up.
Question though, is there something in there that allows for special permits or special uses for things like that? Because I know at certain schools they do during football season, they'll do a big bonfire and that kind of thing. I don't know if the high school
And
does
it was
that,
really nice.
but
I
a
mean,
special permit.
yeah.
So,
I'm asking.
State of Michigan says, subsection 2, 1, does not permit a county or municipality to authorize open burning of grass clippings or leaves by any ordinance that would otherwise be prohibited under Part 55 or rules promulgated under the park. So now we've had that bonfire. We've actually had that. We've let it go for a few years because the first couple of years we found out like the 11th hour. But honestly, where they do that bonfire is the worst place because you got Miller Pond right there. It's just dry. Again, the worst thing we want around here is have one of our ravines or our wildlife areas go up because it's going to be nothing nice.
But, I mean, I must say, it was really nice, and we had our fire department there on hand, and it was actually nice.
So getting that fire truck there is extremely difficult. So now
Okay.
if your house catches on fire, we got the attack engine
I'm gonna be needing you
is
to
at the
be
high
on your
school
way.
down the hill and opening that's this big, honestly.
Yeah, and you're right, so no burning means no burning.
All right. I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll come back next month.
Probably, could this be sent to public safety? Commissioner,
We're not talking about fees.
you said no?
No?
No, I was asking. Could this be sent to your committee? Because he was gonna make the changes, get them sent out to the commission.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, yep.
So
One
we'll
on
do it
public
next week.
safety.
Yeah.
Yep,
Next week.
One other thing,
next week.
we won't have to worry about if somebody is barbecuing
No, that
or
was
what,
permissible.
no, hear me out.
Speak specifically to it.
I know. If somebody has a fire going and, I mean, just, the police won't be stopping just because they see a fire and
No,
somebody's
it
preparing
speaks
to
to
burn.
being able to cook outside. in
Yeah.
here. Yep, it was a separate one about that burn.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 4-2.
Mhm.
4-2?
A.
4-2, this does not apply to the grilling or cooking of food using charcoal, wood, electricity, propane, or natural gas, and cooking or grilling of appliances. Cooking, grilling appliances. Does not apply to burning the purpose of generating heat inside of a house. Okay, so Commissioner, we had some small discussion about the fees.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, or what are our thoughts on that?
So in reading it, there was, the minimum was like $75.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting, people are learning about this, and I think we're gonna get the information out. It's kind of low. It's kind of a low fee. I feel like it's a low fee.
And one thing I didn't understand is, it says, in no case, however, shall cost of less than $250 or more than $500 be ordered. Can you clarify what that means?
I think that's what we need to clear up, because, that is not the same as what the actual fines are, and I think maybe Mr. Rock can speak to that more. I'm not sure. Let me see, the violators, let me turn this down so I can see it, it'd be helpful. The violator shall pay costs which may include all expenses direct and indirect which the city has incurred in the connection with the municipal infraction. In no case, however, shall costs of less than $250 or no more than $500 be ordered. So is that any kind of contradiction of the above scale that says the minimum and maximum?
Oh, you're asking me? Well, so fines are, so when I'm prosecuting an ordinance violation, Chapter 117 of the Michigan Compile Law says that municipalities can fine misdemeanors or civil infractions can be no more than $500. So with whatever ordinance or violation or penalty can't be more than $500 in fines. But the courts then tack on top of fines, costs, state costs. So like a fine maybe of, for, a minimum fine of $75, then there's going to be court costs of, $45, $75, state costs of, $75. Sometimes if there's a victim's rights fee, they've got that involved. If the court ever orders community service, there's community service fees. Or you do a maximum fine of $500, but then they're gonna, the fine is $500, but the court's gonna tack on more. And if you've got costs for, sending the fire truck out or handling that, it says that in no case, however, cost shall be less than $250, no more than $500. So you're gonna have potentially maximum fine of $500 plus cost of $500, and they're capped at $1,000.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if I can clarify, put this in demo street cop terms, there's the fine and there's the cost. Those are separate.
Correct.
Okay. So the fine is the first part, and then the cost for the services that you just enumerated could be no more than. So the court would say, for example, give Commissioner Isom a $75 fine, and then with that, the cost of this proceeding could be $275.
But I would, under this, if you really wanted to make sure that costs for the city's abatement or whatever, that you take the limiting factors of the costs out.
So you saying remove $250, just make it $500?
No, just say that the violator shall pay costs, and which may include all expenses, direct and indirect, and the city has incurred with the municipal infraction, or in this case, actually, because it's not an infraction, because if we're gonna make this a misdemeanor, so with the in connection with this ordinance or with this chapter, and then just scratch out the in no case, however, shall cost be less than $500, no more than $500. That way, the city, along with the incident reports or before the matter's concluded, sends something to the prosecutor, to the court, with the bill of costs that it incurred, so that the court can say, okay, here's your fine, and here are your costs.
Okay. So you make that general.
I would just scratch that out. That in no case, however, shall cost be less. Cost be less than $250, no more than $500. Just cross that out.
Because our cost could be more than $250. Because the city's cost could be more, or
sure.
More than $500. Gotcha.
I mean, you can put in no less than, put a floor and no ceiling.
Will no less than cap us at the $500 though?
No, it just says no. I mean, for costs, no less than is no less than 250, but there's no cap, so it'll be whatever.
The will of the board.
So I might be off on an island with this, but with this being something new, I would love it to see if it's a first offense, keep the cap. I don't know, with it being new and people just may not know about it, I don't know. Because essentially what you're saying is if you you know, don't know about this law, it's your first offense, you pay that $75. And in theory, you could be paying $2,000, you know, depending on what the cost, where you could be paying $2,000. So I don't know if it's possible to do second offense and forward no maximum, but it just seems a little cruel to me to do first offense and then, you know, no maximum. But
If you wanna, I
I don't
think,
know if anyone else even agrees with that.
if we show up, grab a boost line, unroll it, and go roll off, that's about $1,200
How much?
for the fire. About,
How much?
you ever think about 1,200 for the
12 or 2?
12.
Oh.
It's not cheap rolling out.
Oh, wow.
Truck, the water, the personnel, getting the hookup. So
Okay.
we'll do what we're told, obviously.
But we're gonna do we're gonna inform people so that they're aware
Okay.
of these rules. It's not gonna be a, go ahead. Commissioner Alger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to fines, costs, and fees, specifically for a first offense, I don't know why it could not be just a verbal reprimand. I think that looking at the income level of the most of the Benton Harbor City residents, yeah, they need to follow the law. And once they become aware that it is a law and it's our job not to just make the laws that we end up fighting later on, that we place them in reference to exactly that. The income level of Benton Harbor, because from what I've saw or seen over in the courthouse, in the courtrooms, is that something can start off there and be very costly later on. And I don't just, it's not fair. It's not fair, and the judicial system is not fair. And I think that we really need to backtrack on these costs that could be incurred upon the residents.
Can I say something? This is one of those times where it scares me. I'm almost in agreement with her. So that is
For
true.
real.
So here's the thing. Burning, how severe an issue has that been for us? So maybe that cost can come down, but one thing she has to realize is the court incurs a cost to even having the person show up and going through the whole proceedings of the appearance. So I get that. But, you know, I think because our next discussion will be heightening costs for the dumping, which is really what we're mad about. Is the burning an issue such that we want to impose $500 for somebody who burns leaves? Now, granted, it could turn terrible. They don't generally do. So I would agree with, you know, 500 can be stiff on burning. If we're talking about dropping, you know, sharp used needles, that's a whole other story. So, you know, I'm open to the will of the people. I do agree with her. Maybe reduce that 500 maybe down to no more than 250.
I mean, some of us try to live upright and uphold the law, but you don't know who may be the one 5-10 years from now that ends up, we as probably grandparents may have to incur some things and be like, well, dang, I voted for that, and
Thank you.
But if all politics start local, and we as lawmakers, we need to think long term in what we're putting together.
So are we saying that that's a humongous jump from 75 to 500? Does that need to be adjusted on the back
You
end?
mean on the first offense?
Really, all of it. I mean, that's a
Yeah, because your last one makes no sense. The minimum and maximum are identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody gets caught burning 3 times,
They need.
I am not in agreement
absolutely.
with changing a maximum fine.
Absolutely.
If it's the 3rd time that you're burning and you know that there's a offense against burning, no, you should incur the $500 penalty.
I missed that.
And you know, I do also want to add that I think you still need to include language, because if this is a misdemeanor, then you have to have and or up to 90 days in jail, because that's
It went from
That's the way it works.
No.
So that's another, I guess, I'm sorry, this is not low hanging fruit. Because the state statute for burning is civil infraction.
Yeah.
The part of 115, it is actually here, section 115.46 and section 115.49 do not apply to an individual violates subsection 3 of burning or from waste. That's something totally different. Such an individual is responsible for a state civil infraction and is subject to the following. The first offense within 3 periods of warning by the judge or magistrate. For a second offense within 3 years, a civil fine of not more than $75. A third offense within three-year period, a civil fine not more than $150. And for a fourth or subsequent offense within 3 years, a civil fine of not more than $300.
Your current ordinance makes it a misdemeanor, I believe.
You know what I'm saying? Do we want to keep it that way or bring it down to civil infraction?
I think we should bring it down to a civil infraction.
It should remain.
And unless if somebody gets caught 4 times, that is a misdemeanor.
I don't
If
think
you're
nobody
if you're
will
caught
do that.
burning in the city limits after you've been warned 3 other times, that 4th time is a misdemeanor.
And that could be done too.
4 times.
So we're,
You're ignoring, you're completely disregarding what we're asking you not to do. Go ahead, Commissioner, then I'll get
Have
you.
we had a problem with burning in the city? People still try to burn? No problem at all?
well, I'm saying all, but it's minimal.
People still try to.
Maybe a couple people.
People still
Yes,
try.
we have.
There's a couple.
No, we have, so it's not like.
Have you given out tickets or some warnings or something?
Yeah, that one I told you about.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner, Singleton. Oh my gosh, I'm having a moment. Sorry. Come take it.
Okay.
On my mind.
Gotta start getting some more like
Need a reason I can't.
I think you're getting the, when you talk about the fines and costs, I think the cost, most of the time I see the cost usually be, like you say, the court cost, what they add on for their fees and stuff. But I think we're looking more at restitution. If the restitution would be whatever cost it costs the city to abate whatever. So when you asking for the fines, then the court add on their cost, and then we asking for restitution. I think that's how that works. And then that way you're not limiting yourself. So the restitution would be whatever it costs you to abate the situation. Maybe the attorney, I think, yeah.
Oh,
Is that-
I think in this instance, the ordinance is fine, you know, how it states the costs involved or associated with the abatement or the cleanup or the, whatever it is. The court, for a civil infraction, restitution is only available technically, I think, in misdemeanors, but if there's a bill associated with the costs pursuant to the ordinance, the court will just order,
That is at the cost.
will order the and costs for, abatement to be payable to the city. But then, so, okay, what the court normally does is even on a fine, on a retail fraud or something where fines and costs are $400, most of the tickets I prosecute, they're handled by indigent defense counsel, which means they don't have sufficient income. And so the courts recognize and say, $50 a month until it's paid in full. So if we get something, for costs, for whatever they be, it's gonna be a slow, they're not gonna have the money to pay those costs, and they might not ever pay it, and then a warrant goes out for the arrest if they don't pay timely, and it's just a long and slow and arduous process.
if I can help sum this up, hopefully I have my notes if I can read my own writing. Actually, this already does state it's civil, so we'll leave that. We'll add a misdemeanor for 4 or more. We said we wanted to change it from add covered fire pits with proximity, extinguishment. And then for clarification, I'm going to add the line from the actual state ordinance that says such an individual is responsible for a city civil infraction. To clarify what's in here, it just says that it's punishable by civil fine. Does that sum up what we?
Yeah, that's what I have here.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you have? Question?
Yeah, fines are steep, but they'll be sufficient, but what I like to see is you guys have some kind of, a little more consideration towards the citizens. We don't burn, that's automatically, but in the case that you automatically fine from the beginning, you took it down off of the board.
Do we want to add the first level according to the state was
Yeah,
a verbal warning?
Yeah.
Verbal
I didn't know
warning.
they did, so I just wanted to.
yeah, that's good.
What I like to see, the fines are still high, even the second tier, third tier, fourth tier. If it's possible, that you guys consider, community service for our people instead of that $500. I mean, you can mix it up. If you're doing it 2 times, you're gonna do it some more anyway. So they don't get community service the second time. Something like that. You gotta have some kind of compassion is a good word. Thank you.
Thank you. And so for the first one, you do have verbal warning added to.
I like that. That's pretty good. All right, that's easy enough. All right, that's low hanging fruit. It's about to really get down now. Okay, littering. Actually, it was what the illegal dumping falls under for both state and also for city ordinance. Our city ordinance actually has got some really good stuff in here. The problem is, we all know, the magnitude of dumping in our city is voluminous, to say the least. And then there's certain complexities that we have uncovered in even trying to come up with answers to deal with them. So let's work backwards for the most recent one we all just discussed. Set-outs. I think we all agree that some of the dumping around our community, from the sofas, the couches, the carpeting, the padding, are landlords who are evicting people and coming through, getting rid of the junk and revamping the house for the next person they're going to throw out. So that's all well and dandy, because our ordinance, chapter 18, speaks very clearly to landlords and set-outs. In 1825, I think it is, and we can kind of prove that. However, the complexity comes in is, what if it's an housing commission who's not a person, but they're an entity? What do we do? How do we deal with that? So that wasn't even the crux of our discussion. But it gives you an idea of, as we look at these things, how they become even kind of more complicated. So with that being said, real quick, first of all, I'd like to actually really commend Attorney Rock, who's our city attorney, who took it upon himself to come out on his own time, and he toured the city with me. Because I say that you can't get the magnitude of the problem until you see it yourself. He's the first one to do it. I also invited Mike Sepek, who will do it next week. And he actually, I think, was shocked, if I can probably put it mildly. So I think it's important for him to get understanding of what we're trying to accomplish and what the magnitude is. So I thank him for that. Again, I've contacted prosecutor attorney Mike Sepek. City manager is going to put us in contact with the chief judge, because what we want to do is have a conversation with them. Whatever we send through in relation to dumping, be it if it's written under city ordinance or state statute, it's got to go through. That you understand the nature of the situation. We also, I think, want to reach out and talk to the county treasurer, even maybe Commissioner Yarborough, because now you probably have seen since last Friday, driving around, we have properties that are dump sites, houses that are apparently set to be demolished or in foreclosure, that now they are posted with the Orange County signs. So some of these properties are the counties. And we haven't had a whole lot of luck with compliance simply on cutting grass, let less removing trash. So that's another complexity that we kind of fell into, that the people smarter than me will help figure out what we're going to do with that. So, kind of give you an idea, the sheriff, he's reached out with us. We're going to be able to use his work crew, at least to kind of get started in some areas. So what we're trying to do is line up from the judiciary part, that they understand the magnitude of the problem, and that when we send them tickets for whatever, wherever they come, that they understand and push those through for us. We've seen in the past, several years ago, when we put through loud music tickets, we had a certain judge who's no longer on the bench now, but he would throw them out because he said, it's not that big a deal. If you don't have a decimeter, then I'm going to dismiss these. So we want to make sure that our judges are on the same page as us, because we are citizens and we as a community are saying, this is what we want to have enforced and we need you to enforce it. So we'll keep you posted on that. Hopefully we'll have an answer by our committee next month.
Can I?
I'm not even close to being done. It's just started, so if we don't do this, because I do that. So,
Can he finish his,
I need clarity on something that he said before he moves on to another. You mentioned the land bank, the county, and the properties where dumping and grass cutting
there's
is.
some county-owned properties, yes, ma'am.
Okay, are they taking care of their portion of the responsibility of
That's what I just kind of said.
are we fining them as well as the residents when they don't clean up what somebody's dumped on their property?
It's not really that easy. I think we've had,
I guess I've never known how that works, and I want clarity on it.
he fights every single year that I've known him with them over there.
It is.
Knock down your
I'm sure, but
Yes.
when the roles are turning, though, they want what they want.
Yeah, the challenge that we have is when you want, when you're dealing with elected officials that are in positions that are administrators, their boss is the voters that turn out every time they elect them. So it's kind of hard to maneuver through or go to the next level with that individual, whomever it may be, if they're an elected official. Because you can't go to their immediate boss. So on a gentleman's agreement, they work with the administrator at the county. And so you try to work through that system.
Okay.
But it's tough.
Okay, and I just asked that question because I know when we owe the county for buyback or whatever, we have to pay that money, and if they're not taking care of their portion of the responsibility, I asked this for a very important reason, because on the state level, there's some things going on, and they want an answer from me about my community in regards to the land bank, and this is going to help me to figure out how I need to address it. So, thank you.
Being an owner of empty lots, and even I'm hearing saying that land bank, they're dumping on their property as well. I'm sure not the land bank is dumping on the property.
Not that they're dumping it, but they're not.
But, okay,
they're not cleaning it up.
they're not cleaning up. So, I own a lot, and it's have dumping on it now. It's out of my pocket every time they dump on it. And because it has no trash collection on that property, because there's no water, no building there, I have a hard time getting somebody to pick it up. I couldn't get our trash people to do it because that's not one of their addresses. So I'm always up behind the gun when they dump on my property, and it's happening all the time. And I don't think it's fair that I have to come out of pocket every time they dump on it. If they dump one mattress on it 1 week, in the next 2 days, there's 3 more mattresses, and inspection comes out and put a tag on it on the first day, but they keep dumping on it. So there's some compassion or something that has to be put in place to filter us or help us.
Don't be quiet.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Be quiet, don't say that. Say something.
Was a question.
So I guess the question I was gonna ask, I was gonna let you finish your presentation, but what should residents do, and you probably can answer this once we finish, if they have an empty lot, and she said that they don't have an address, that even the garbage, what can residents do to address that? And I guess we let them finish it.
Yeah,
We'll come back to it. Thanks.
So let's jump ahead a little bit, because one of the things, again, we're trying to be really creative with this thing, and one of the things that the city manager and I talked about is, as far as the actual removal of the garbage, you know, when we broke it down, what makes us different than grass and grass abatement? Well, we contract people to cut grass, city lots, abatement lots, parks, whatever. Would this be any different? So I contacted a couple of companies. I didn't know, I learned from a street cop again, not a junk dealer, that there are companies that that's what they do, they haul junk. And I made contact with a couple of companies in the area, and they were very interested in if an RFP was to come out, to be able to bid on that and do some work in the city. So with that being said, on a regular kind of scale, in a regular situation, if, I guess for example, if there was a lot that we had to abate, then that cost would be passed through the normal channels to the owner of the lot. I'm not sure how that would work when it happens to be another government that owns it, but we think that'll be more efficient, very efficient, where we can eliminate some things, some liability, some dumpsters down at Public Works, not pay, you know, almost $170,000 in dumpsters, and perhaps if they're made available, maybe, you know, a cooperative homeowner might say, hey, can we contract the city's contractor to come remove stuff for us? You know, so that option is available to them. Again, we want compliance. We're code compliance. We're not code Nazis. So I know what maybe city manager might want to add to that, but kind of jumping ahead, those are some ideas that we're.
The circle of this dumping. I know that, you know, Commissioner Henry made mention about a person having to pay for it. That's the property owner. If you don't pay for it then, you're gonna pay for it when we do all the pickup, because you're the taxpayer. It's hard to be able to do this without the help of the resident helping us. The city can't bear the cost of doing this all by themselves. There's got to be some civic responsibility by the residents to say, we don't want to have it happen, we're not going to let it happen, and we'll do everything we can to prevent it from happening. But if it does happen, somebody's got to pay the cost, and where does the cost come from with all the city services? From the taxpayers. So I hear where you're coming from, and we're working to find ways to reduce it, but we're paying an absorbent amount of money every year to pick up trash. I'm talking about in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That does not even include the time that the employees spend. That's just the end part of it, the removal. We're talking about mobilizing people, mobilizing equipment, gas, insurance, whatever you want to add to it. It's a voluminous problem. So as we start attacking this and taking the bites a little bit at a time, it starts growing, and you have to say, okay, how we adjust to do this. So again, we're open for any ideas, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a cost that we're going to have to find a way to share across a variety of places. Because the other thing too is that for every one citizen, there's probably 10 non-residents. that have properties here that may not ever visit them for the term of when they have them. I don't think it's fair to give them a pass because it's a vacant lot and they go, well, oh, I didn't know. Well, no, that's your property. You do what you bought it for a purpose. Do what you do as a responsible property owner. So it's a double-edged sword going down this road with grass. Debris, garbage, and things of that nature.
I have one other question. With the abatement process with the county, are they paying back, or are they passing those costs on to those with the lots that they own? Are they actually paying for the grass to be cut that's being added to those properties that they own?
There's a contention that governmental entities can't find each other. You know what I mean? So you can't find another government. Trust me, we've been through a court case about this. So yeah, there's that thought. But what we would rather have, as Director McGinnis said, we want compliance. And if it takes you doing it, on a slow pace, we don't need to be in court anymore. But we don't want to have an adversarial relationship where nothing gets done. So that's why it's to try to go and work the system or work with people to have conversations with them first and foremost before you just say we're going to go to court or we're going to do what we need to do. Because that has happened where we spend a lot of money in a court case about fees. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question before you.
Yes, to the chair. Good evening, everyone. Jerry Edwards, Benton Harbor. To piggyback on Director McGinnis and City Manager, in the case of Hall Park and the dumping, last year we finally cleared that whole path that goes from that tree under Highland all the way back. I walked out there last week and there were like 2 mattresses and some tires. April the 27th, I think this is the last weekend of April, Friday and Saturday, we're going to go through it again. I do have the help of Andrews University. But once we get that together, how should we arrange to have it picked up? Or, should we put it in the past, we've been putting it in a certain spot and City Works would come? Mm-hmm. Would that be the same, or is there another way to relieve pressure off of them?
If I can. One thing I would advise is if you're going to do something like that, do it during the day or during the week. And the reason I say that is this. If you leave trash or you leave a pile of stuff sometimes over the weekend, it gets 4 to 5 times bigger by the time it's time to pick it up. So we can do that. We can work together because if you're doing the labor part of it, we can do that part of it. We can come get it, collect it, and take it down there. But again, like I said, we don't want to add to it because what ends up happening sometimes we've had where things that we can't get rid of, i.e. paint and tires, show up. And then they're sitting there and we don't want to just leave them sitting there. So now we have to take the next step to find out how we get rid of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Chief,
So, looking at our current ordinance, it's actually pretty decent. Only thing I would make some recommendations on as far as changing is some of the definitions, and there's some sections, I won't go through all this, that I think could be made clearer by changing the definitions and then putting the correct word into the sentence. So again, I'm going back and forth between Part 89, which is the state litter statute, and ours. One thing the state, I think, as far as the definitions, is that litter, basically they got two definitions for basically trash and garbage. Littering means the following: rubbish, refuse, waste material, garbage, offal, paper, glass, cans, etc. Ours has that in a couple of different sections, which I think are good. Again, I'm going to be popping kind of back and forth so you can see. There's only a couple sections that need clarifying, because again, I think chapter 18 is pretty good. It's pretty good. The discussion that's come up most in our committee and for you is the fining portion, which I'm going to give you some information from the state. Here's the big thing that we need to make a decision on, at least from my officers and law enforcement perspective, is that when you look at the penalty piece, and again, I'm not trying to make you get dizzy. If you look at the penalty, littering and dumping, all that's pretty good stuff.
It's 29.
29, yeah, okay. Try to get down to 29.
Here you go.
So, any person convicted of violating any provision of this article except section 1821 shall be punishable by a fine having a maximum of $500 and having a minimum of $100 for the first offense, a minimum of $200 for the $250 for the second offense, and a minimum of $500 for the third offense. I think Attorney Rock can speak to us as cities are limited to what we can charge. I'm not sure if there's a way to charge more to that. I do not know. One thing I'd like to recommend is that you want to.
Oh, well, the other avenue the city has is under section 25, which is the nuisance abatement, which isn't a criminal offense, but it's a code enforcement where it talks about if there is on property, like a vacant lot, if someone has used that as a dumping site, whether people are coming in or it's the property owner, it's the property owner's responsibility, unfortunately, in these situations, to make sure their property is cleaned up. And from the drive-through, it's a huge problem, and I certainly understand Commissioner Henry's concerns. But Chapter 25 is something that allows a letter to go out to the property owner, to get posted on the property, to give them the opportunity to clean it up. They don't clean it up within a certain amount of time. The city comes in and does it, and then it sends the bill to the property owner, and if the bill doesn't get paid within a certain amount of time, it gets taxed, it gets added on to the property tax, and if they don't pay it that way, then then it goes to the county for collection, which means forfeiture and foreclosure. But that's something the city doesn't want, because the city ends up back with the property and or the land bank, and the city certainly doesn't want any more vacant or abandoned residential lots to deal with. The city's got enough to worry about.
Right.
And it's such a huge and disheartening problem, but the manager was correct. The city has to have the residents just willing to stand up and say no more, and even if that means getting trail cameras, the city buying trail cameras, property owners getting trail cameras, and so that we can catch those people who are doing that, and so that they can either be cited criminally or something that we can get. It's one of those things where where do you start? It's such a big issue, and I think starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere.
So here's one of the things that we got to kind of decide. And every situation is different. I think it has to be judged on its own circumstances. So the state of Michigan, Part 89, which I have up here, is the state statute for littering, and actually it's pretty good. Basically, it says what ours says. A person should not knowingly without consent of public authority having a supervision of public property owner, dump, deposit, place, throw, or leave, cause or permit the dumping, et cetera, et cetera. The difference between our ordinance and the state statute is that the state statute is a civil infraction and our ordinance is a misdemeanor. With that being said, amazingly, the state statute has extremely stiff penalties, far stiffer than we currently have. So honestly, if we really wanted to send a message, we'd write under state statute, knowing that we will forgo any money we get from the city ordinance, which I don't think is a whole lot of money, but we get something from that. If we want to send a message, the state statute speaks to it. So I'll give you an example. And I got a question because I don't know how you measure a cubic foot. But under the state statute, violations as a state civil infraction, civil fine, and the remedies, the person who violates this part, and if the amount of litter is less than 1 cubic foot in volume, is responsible for a state civil infraction and is subject to a civil fine of not more than $800. A person who violates this part, if the amount of litter is 1 cubic foot or more, but less than 3 cubic feet, like Moses, is responsible for a state civil infraction and is subject to a civil fine not more than $1,500. The next one, same thing, but that's up to $2,500. So it's a civil infraction, but that fine structure is huge.
And I will say that this is not more than.
Right.
So a judge is not going to, on a first or second or even third offense, hit those maximums. I mean, I suppose unless it depends on, because it says not more than, right? That says, or it doesn't say or not less than. I'm sorry, I can't read that.
Yeah, not more than.
Yeah, not more than. So, he's gonna have anywhere from 0 to not more than. So, I mean, that's the limiting, that's kind of the drawback to that, because the judge is not gonna, unless, we,
That's why we're asking a meeting.
unless we have a meeting and.
And this is what we would like.
Right.
So with that being said, and I don't know, that's why I have Attorney Rock here, one of the things that the state has, which I think is good, my highlights are terrible up there, but they have in 324-8905B additional penalties. And these are things that we've talked about that we want, if we can do it in our ordinance. 89 says, in addition to any other penalty or sanction provided in this part for a criminal or civil action brought under this part, the court may require the defendant to pay either or both of the following. Again, we've had great discussion on this in public safety. The cost of removing all litter, which is the subject of the violation, and the cost of damage to any land, water, wildlife, vegetation, or natural resource, or to any facility damaged by the violation. Skipping down to number 2, again, I like this. In addition to any other penalty or sanction provided for in this part, the court shall impose, which somebody brought up, under the supervision of the court, community service in the form of litter gathering labor, including but not limited to litter connected with a particular violation. Is there any way, Attorney Rack? Rock the Cosmo. Is there any way we can, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I've been killing your name for a week now. Can that be written into our ordinance, or is that something that is difficult?
I think the community service, I think, can certainly be ordered into the ordinance, or written into the ordinance. Making the abatement costs part of the deal. You're still kind of running into the same problem if you're under the nuisance. So if you're adding abatement costs to the property owner,
I'm talking more of people we catch in the act. But we know for a fact you dumped in this alley, you dumped on this lot, not so much the property owner, because I kind of feel a certain way about penalizing people who've gone through this. I think that's. So when we had the discussion in Burning, you said we can include that, but leave it open.
Yeah,
Is that something we would be able to do?
Yeah.
If we don't put into it?
right, as long as we don't start, yeah, I mean, again, as long as it doesn't, we're not putting on the tax rolls under the criminal section, then yeah, I think that's fine, making it.
I have a question for the committee.
Okay. So I had a couple of quick comments here. The first one is I really agree with Commissioner Henry. You know, if you're a property owner and you just removed 10 mattresses Monday, guess what? Tuesday you could get 5 more. So I think that is a huge burden. And I know you all mentioned cameras. So I have personal experience with cameras outside of my property, and people are sharp. They may wear a hat, they may wear a hoodie. So I just feel that realistically, I don't feel confident that we are going to catch it. Maybe, you know, I could be totally wrong, and I hope I am, but I feel like you may not catch people. So you may have all these great things in place, but if you're not catching the people, it's kind of useless. So my question here is, do we have any type of a bulk trash pickup thing going on for the city of Benton Harbor? What I'm saying is, I lived in a place where you could pay like $20 for a bag. And I could put my mattress in this bag I bought from City Hall, and then it was a bulk trash pickup day, and the city would then pick up the mattresses. I'm just wondering, are they doing this because they don't have any other option? Do we have that?
Well, here's the deal. To pick up a mattress costs you $5.
Okay.
10.
It costs you 10 if it gets large. So a mattress and box spring is 5, but a big sectional is 10. But even with that, they're not doing it.
Okay.
It's a nominal fee, as you say. My mother lives in the township, and they give them passes to the dump twice a year.
Okay.
You can take a whole truckload of stuff out there, and it's free. You know, we're willing to go to those lengths. We're talking about doing a cleanup day in May, having, you know, bins and dumpsters available. After we get done, though, what happens?
Have another one.
You know, and this is what I was saying. I told this to Director McGinnis this week. A once a year cleanup ain't gonna get it done.
4.
That's not gonna get it done.
Seasonal.
This almost has to be a monthly, in your face. Every time you turn around, people talking about cleanup. And it has to get to a point where it becomes so common that kids start talking about it, from kids to senior citizens, say, you know what, man, don't put that on the ground.
Yeah.
It's a culture change is what we're talking about. It has to go to that point. And then once it gets to that point, then you'll see it start receding. And then the other thing is, when you see something, say something. If you see a truck with a whole bunch of tires on it, and they don't have something on the side that says M&W or something else, you probably need to call the police or the code compliance and say, there's a truck in my neighborhood. Here's what it looks like. So now you start running them out of here. So again, it has to be a systemic cultural change in mindset that happens.
Okay.
That's one real quick thing. I'm not sure. I don't have any met you what your name is. But we're in our PD. We've got 14 people. 11 of them was caught in the act. We caught one today dumping. So yeah, that's without cameras.
Okay.
We'll get it done.
Yeah. And I guess my question would be, because I still get phone calls, even though we have a new trash company, I paid for an extra trash can. Do the residents, are they aware, or is that available?
I'm gonna tell you what's.
No, can they purchase?
Hold on. They are, but you know what's happening? People are stealing other folks' trash cans. I just had a conversation with the trash hauler. He went and got another 150 because the ones that they set out, they end up taking, and then you look up and somebody down the street's got 3, you got 1 that you just got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, can we just do this? The citizens agree that we want our city cleaned up. Give everybody 2 cans and let them incur the cost. And let's do that monthly, talk about in-your-face cleanup. I mean, I was at Rite Aid earlier, and I had just pulled up, and the kids in the back seat throw out a piece of paper, and I'm like, I get instantly mad. I'm at Rite Aid, though. And I'm like, and the young lady said, you seem like you're angry. And you know, she was walking in the store too, and I'm like, thinking in my mind, now the last thing I need Ben to do is be picking up the paper reading about Commissioner Adams and got killed over arguing with somebody about a piece of paper.
But that kind
Make no sense.
that kind of mentality, Commissioner, has to go from, like I said, from the smallest kid in school
I know.
to the most senior person we've got.
Yeah.
Everybody has to get
Everybody
an
plays a
attitude
part.
about it. Everybody has to get an attitude about it. Yeah.
I like that. That was really good. I like that.
I got one other thing to add in, and we can go further with questions. I would suggest, if it's possible, again, that's why I have Attorney Rock,
Like R-O-C-K.
Rock here.
It's true.
So it's not for next round. If we can include possibly, and this is just my own thing, if we can't, we can't, the ability to impound people's vehicles who again, caught in the act. I'm not talking about you got stuff in your yard, you just will up and you tow your car out your driveway. Catch them in the act, impound their car. The state's provision has a seizure statute for it. However, that is only in the case of a felony. Either the third-time offender or they're depositing
Something that's illegal.
something that's a health hazardous. So again, I would send the message. I myself followed somebody from the city a couple nights ago. Actually, after our meeting Monday, I followed for like 20 minutes. I was a stalker. What they're doing now is they're driving the township and driving around trying to lose us. So, you know, if we can, at this point, I'm saying this is punitive. If we catch you in the act, like the gentleman today,
Was it from here?
yes, I won't. If I tell you, you're gonna be mad.
Right. Oh, that was horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you guys saying?
I am on.
You don't
We are.
So, yeah, if that was something that is it possible? Is it a stretch? If it's too much, it's too
Under a
much.
municipal ordinance, that's going to be a stretch. Because that's going to require, that's got to be a state thing, because there's, you know, vehicles are titled with state, and I think that's going to have to be a state thing.
So-
I'll look into it, but.
You know, you and this I have to. I was just thinking. Because one thing I thought of, well, if that's a commission of a crime, if we use city ordinance, it's a misdemeanor, and we take the vehicle and hold it until the disposition of the case.
It's like a seizure of evidence.
All right, so
I
let's
don't
not make
know.
it harder than it is.
Right.
I'm sorry. All right, throw it out. However, I do believe that if we can add cost of removal, basic remediation, community service, and then once we get the meeting with the chief judge and say, hey judge, this is we got to have this, then I think that it can be effective if we write city ordinance, which would always be my preference, but people that are really dumping humongous volumes of stuff, we want to hammer them with the state statute. So that's what I'm sending to you for consideration. Some of the language that we can clean up should be relatively easy. Again, I think chapter 18 is pretty good. I think Attorney Rock
There you go.
agrees.
It's not, yeah, I think it's worth wasting time in order to change it. So, you know, your officers have the ability to write under either right now, still. I mean, so it just, you know, takes a little, it's gonna have a little, yeah, so.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I have a question to what you said about the ordinance. Is it a way that you can get, like, if you catch them in the act of it, can you basically, when they, how can I say that? Make them be the ones, when they do their community service, be the ones that go out and pick up the trash and you know, go to the different locations and be the one to pick up for their punishment as well.
If we get this in, I don't see any reason why we couldn't. That would be fantastic. Because one of the problems that we have now, and I don't know, I try to think about it too much because I'm already obsessed with this, is that the people that we catch, we make them put the stuff back on their truck, give them their ticket off to go, and that's like, again, we're putting together as we go, but what do we do? You know,
Right.
do we make make them go to a dump that we charge? I don't know. At this point, I'm open for suggestions because that's still an issue.
I got one.
We can't tow it with the junk on it, so.
Right. But impound would be good to
Yeah,
just,
impound, yeah.
something to slow them down.
Question, Commissioner.
First of all, Benton Harbor Public Safety is gonna have to find a way to stop it. That's number one. We gotta find a way to stop it. Now, education, I heard him say, it's a social issue, and we need to educate our people. That's number two. I just found out the other day that it's cheaper for us to, it's more expensive for us to get a dumpster and haul it to the landfill than it is to get one of our trucks, trash trucks, to pick it up and then take it to the dumpster. It's a lot of savings for us if we have our trash people come down and pick it up and take it to the landfill than for us to buy a dumpster and haul it to the landfill.
No, we talked about that. We talked about outsourcing that. This specifically, what you just said.
Oh, okay. So I'm just thinking on how to solve my little problem, and which will solve some other problems. If I can't call my trash people to come to my lot and pay them to pick up somebody else's garbage and trash, that definitely will solve my problem. If I could call them and say, I got 2 mattresses today, can you pick them up and pay them? Then to have inspections to come back on the 4th day and find two mattresses and a couch and 3 dogs dead. So we gotta find some way to fix the problem. And this giving them penalties, and I'm just completely happy about the community service if they'll put them in our community. If they send them to Stevensville, I'm not gonna be happy with that. So we really need to find something to fix the problem, because right now we're not fixing it, we're just penalizing some people. If they get caught, they're gonna be penalized. If it's not their trash, they're gonna be penalized. So,
Commissioners, one of the things that Director McGinnis and I talked about when we talked about the outsourcing part of it was having the ability to do just what you talked about, where these companies do, that's what they do. And if you can call them and they can come help you get the stuff off of your property. We're just throwing out options at this point. We're looking at solutions and possible solutions to the problem, where they may be, it may be something like that, because if the trash hauler has to wait until they get done or whatever, I don't know. But I don't think there's a hindrance to having them come over there and do that on a special pickup. I don't think it is, but again, I just wrote it down so I can ask them. So that if you don't have water service at the property, can you call them and say, hey, I got a mattress, would you charge me the $5 you charge everyone else to come get it? But like I said, I can ask that question and get back as we continue to brainstorm on this thing.
okay, thank you.
Is that fee also for couches? Is that just like a?
It's all large bulk items is what it falls under.
I've used the service when we had
Yep.
other trash people. They
Yep.
come right out, you pay them, and they come right out. All you do is pay them $5.
For the store on Broadway and Empire, there's your Empire corridor, is what I'm talking about. For for years we've tried to get someone to go to that store and have them, if nothing else, put out some trash cans or something. All the way to the high school or all the way back to Pipestone. I wouldn't care. A lot of stuff could not go into the community onto these empty lots right there on Pavone and the church across the street and all that. We have a little, well, I'll say I, because you guys are good at saying I, what I do, so I'll say I have little youngsters come for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe longer than that, I can't even count, but from Broadway and Empire, pick it up back to McAllister, the whole area around by the store. But no one has yet went and said anything to the store owner about putting some trash cans out or doing their, what should be their duty. They know all of those bags and bottles and everything that's coming out of their store and going right there in the neighborhood, right there. So I like to see that taken care of. That would take care of a lot of our illegal dumping on our Empire process. That would help a lot of picking up on those empty lots. Every year, nobody pays us to do that. And it's been years and years. I tell you, I can't even remember how many, but we have to take care of first things first. And all of the stores is basically like that around the property. You go around the area, you see all of that stuff laying in people's yards.
I'd like to speak to Mr. Duncan's, his issue.
My issue on Pavone, it was 3 or 4 mattresses out there last meeting. Yesterday, there are 7 or 8. There's a house right behind me that had a dumpster. They were filling it up. I guess they were moving out or something. And when the man came to take the dumpster away, I asked him if it was okay if I came over there, if he'd help me put those bed mattresses on there. So he gave me the opportunity. He helped me put 7 or 8 of them up there. We looked back, it was still 3 or 4 of them laying on the ground, but he had no more space. So citizens do what they're supposed, if all citizens do what they're supposed to do, their yard wouldn't look bad. And what's wrong with picking up next to you if it's an empty lot there, picking it up too, or paying some of these youngsters but won't have a job all summer, because I don't think no jobs have been made up for them yet. If they are, I'd like to know, because I could use some of those youngsters too, to get the Empire corridor taken care of. I know we're talking about cleaning up in May, but I'm not talking about May. I started Wednesday, this past Wednesday when the trash man moved, and that's the best time to put things out is before the trash man gets there.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Thanks for your time.
So I would say to that, one of the things we have to realize is we've been talking about property owners. People on business too also should be held accountable under 1826. And if the lot next door to BJ's is owned by the store, or whoever's owned by it, then they have an obligation to get that trash off. So actually, that's another.
Pay our youngsters to clean it
Hold on.
up.
That's another thing that I didn't discuss, because we have a lot of stores that have empty discarded crates in the edge of their parking lot. That's on our list to take care of. So that would fall, I believe, under 1826, because they have an obligation to clean that. With that being said, though, 18-26 says there's a fine of $15. Next offense is $25, and then it's $100. So I think we should probably change that. I make a recommendation, and also, like we're going to do with the burning, take that to our committee next week and have that be vetted by the Public Safety Committee, because that's not going to work.
Okay, that sounds good.
Just
We need to move on.
Can you move
You have a question?
second.
Go ahead, sir.
The people what you're catching, dumping, are they all being treated the same? I mean, if you find somebody from St. Joe, and I'm just saying St. Joe, but if you find somebody from St. Joe was dumping here, are they getting the fine and the community service? I mean, you say you had 7 of them, you had one today.
We don't do fines or community service.
I mean, but you have,
We got an ordinance, that's what we're using, so everyone gets charged under the ordinance.
okay, can I suggest then that we raise the price of, somebody who gets caught legally dumping in Benton Harbor? We saying $500 too much for our citizens, but $500 is not too much for the ones who's coming in our town, putting it in our yard.
You gotta be careful. You can't, if the law is broken, it has to be equally
That's what I
applied.
said, make it equal,
Yeah.
but make it large.
So the one person that we find that was driving around with tires was fined under the state statute.
Right.
So we can only operate within the bounds of the law. That's why I say to you, are we saying collectively for people that are caught in the act, especially with gigantic living room sets, do we want to hit them with the state statute, which is a little bit more financially punitive than our ordinance, which is not as much, although it's a misdemeanor.
You have that
I
out.
think, no, for people who get caught in the act, should we use the state statute or the city? I think we should use the state statute because it's a higher penalty and it'll discourage people from doing that.
That's right.
I think we should use the higher penalty for people getting caught in the act of dumping.
Amen.
I think we should use the state statute.
Can,
We gotta move on to.
definitely move on, but while we're moving on, can we please add those that get caught, I don't care where they stay, that there should be not only costs incurred, but to serve this community with community service hours.
That's part of that, that's part of the statute already.
Good.
And it's going to public safety again for.
Yeah.
My presentation was let's act community service and cost removal. In case somebody missed that, that's what we've been talking about for an hour.
Yeah.
Can we put the pictures up on the
Could you turn
website?
Could you turn that light on, Mr. Duncan? Thank you.
You got their pictures? You can't post them like they do checks.
We didn't even know who they were.
Can know.
Think about it, why? No. Can we put it on the website that they got caught in a picture?
They don't wanna do that.
That's embarrassing, they won't do that anymore.
Right.
It is public information.
It is public information, absolutely.
Shame on. I
Her
bet
players
it-
does it every
shame
single
on
week.
you. If it was,
Every time I ask a question.
They sure do.
So,
Absolutely.
and here, and I'm done, but I'm gonna leave you with this. Now, had we done that ahead of having this discussion, there'd have been, the public safety department putting people out there.
No.
We're gonna do what you wanna do. We're gonna enforce laws that you want us to enforce, and we're gonna make sure they're right. I'll just make sure we're on the same page. So I was using some compassion, not put them out there, but until
That's it.
you said, hey, put them out.
with public embarrassment as well.
People need to know.
Already recorded.
Maybe
Harbor Most Wanted.
As long as that's recorded.
So all of those 2 items are going to public safety? Those 2 items? For
Yes,
final
ma'am.
approval so they can move on? All right, the next one on our agenda is the discussion about proposed council rule changes.
Your resolution.
Everybody give me a copy of council rule.
No, I'm
You
gonna
got a
wait until you got, I'm gonna just sit here, but keep from falling asleep back there.
All right.
I'm gonna wait my turn though. I've only been waiting for 3 years now.
She just wanna get her.
That too.
Keep saying you've been waiting for 4 years.
Yep. 4 actually. This is 19.
You guys wanna go, wanna do line by line or just the changes?
Do you have anything the citizens could look at?
Just the changes, yeah. Just the changes.
I think that's what, that,
Yeah.
what the will was.
The ones that were added to, is what was asked. All right, after that one. You have a copy, does everybody have a copy of?
Of a resolution.
I have it up here.
Legal is leaving.
Here you go.
Legal is leaving.
That was, he didn't,
right there.
Go ahead.
Wow. When the D should be here.
no. I would-
It was stated at Monday night's meeting that a resolution should have been prepared to follow up with this. That's it?
That's it.
That's the resolution?
That's the resolution.
Let's go through
No, that's not a resolution. I know.
yeah, the changes
It's
that
not a
were added.
resolution.
Right.
Go ahead,
You hear me, Commissioner?
the
It's not a
ones that we
resolution.
were requested to be added.
Correct. So what I've seen that Attorney Hearns has done is you look on page 8, number 4. As you, and if you want me to read it, Commissioner, or
Yeah. just-
okay.
Well, yeah.
So the attorney has put together, it says amendments to the agenda, excuse me, at a commission meeting. Any member of the commission may request that the agenda be amended to add an item for discussion. This shall be done only at the time of the approval of the consent agenda. The commissioner making the request shall state the reason or reasons for making the request. The commissioner shall state the proposed amendment to the agenda. A separate motion shall be made in the form of, I move that the agenda be changed to add the following. In order to change the agenda, the motion must be seconded and supported by a majority of the commission elected. If the motion to amend the agenda passes, the agenda as amended shall then be approved by a majority vote of the commission present. The commission may not amend the agenda in violation of state statutes, charter, or city ordinances. So that was the first change that was added to it.
What does that last sentence mean?
That, and this, I'm not an attorney, so don't quote.
That's why it should be here.
But it basically, if you do something, if you amend the agenda, for example, if you say we're going to change marijuana to Class C, it's a Class C drug. If it violates the state law, you can't do it. You can only take what the state law says and further define it, but you can't change it. So that's what this means. As well as any state statute, the charter, you would have to have, as anything you go to change the charter, you have to have the vote of the people. So that's what this is saying, that you cannot change it through a resolution from the floor or a discussion from the floor that would result in.
Yeah, because I think when, even when the chief was doing some of our ordinances, some of those conflicted with the city charter. And so even looking at some of those and making sure that they didn't conflict with what the charter said. So, is there a question, Commissioner?
Yes, in regards to the charter with ordinances and things like that, when those type of changes have to come about, they should be able to be brought to the floor for discussion, but there are public hearings, am I right? That must take place with those type of changes within the city charter?
You have to for
Okay. This is a thought.
for the charter, it's a ballot initiative.
Exactly.
Right, you have
Exactly.
to do that. For a change in the ordinances, you have to have the language and then it has to be presented to the
Okay.
public.
Why is this still sounding more difficult than it needs to be? The only thing the commissioners asked for change was to be able to bring something to the floor for discussion, and if action needed to take place, we have the authority to do that by the majority of a vote.
But that's what it's saying, Commissioner.
Okay, so let me make sure that I'm clearly understanding it
Any
then.
changes to the agenda, this is how you would do that.
Exactly.
So you felt like you came on
Exactly.
Friday and there was no prior
If
discussion.
we
and there was
needed to
something you wanted
bring
add.
up
Hey, point of order.
the finance director position that's empty now, we would be able to bring that to the floor and put forth a resolution at that time to put out an RFP to
So
find
this-
somebody to fill
this
the
one
position.
speaks-
Would this right here allow that?
So this one speaks directly to a change in the agenda.
Exactly.
And so if we go down further, there were some
Okay,
other
so
changes
let's go further.
made to this. That's why I'm saying, let us
That's what I'm
go
waiting
through
for, yeah.
all of the changes and then if you have any questions based on those changes. Let's
Mhm.
continue.
Where's that at?
Can I,
That's that one is just,
Can I ask
this was
one
on page
question
8,
about-
and this was a
Okay.
change to the agenda. So if you came on Monday and there was something you could not get on the agenda, this is how you change
What's
the
the second
agenda.
change?
Does not speak to resolutions and stuff like that.
But
need to
can
keep
we
going.
not-
We need to keep
Yeah,
going. Let's,
yeah,
we have,
can-
it's
can we
7
make-
o'clock.
yeah, and-
Commissioner, we gotta let us
No,
finish.
you gave me the floor, can I please finish,
I'll
just
let
with
you have
one
a question.
statement?
No, he needs to go.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks.
And
The
then I'll
next,
finish.
the next change is on page 11, where it says the
Write your
committees,
question down, Commissioner.
the committee shall consist of an appointed chairperson, 2 city commissioners, and 2 citizen reps who shall serve for 2 years. The committee appointments, including the chairperson, co-chairperson, and committee members, shall be made by the mayor in accordance with section 2-16C of the city ordinance. The committee shall have the ability to convene an ad hoc citizen advisory group. So the change is that the word vice was changed to co in the document. Next change is on page, it starts on 14. A suspension of a policy or procedure, and it continues on page 15. City Commission's policy and procedures can be suspended by any member of the commission. In making its motion, the commissioner must state the applicable section and subsection of the policy and procedure to be suspended. The commissioner shall also state the reason for the suspension of the identified policy or procedure. If the motion is seconded, there should be no debate. The clerk shall take the vote. In order to pass, the motion must be supported by a majority of the commissioners elected. Any suspension of a policy or procedure shall be limited solely to the commission meeting in which the motion was approved. The commission cannot suspend its obligation under state statute, charter, or ordinance. These guidelines may be amended by the city commission by majority vote. These guidelines may be amended by the city commission at any regular meeting of the commission by a majority of the members elect. Any proposed amendments must be made and approved by the legislative committee and supported by the specific language to be amended and or deleted.
So this is what you were speaking to in order
That was what I
to
was
suspend. You have any input with this? Board have any questions?
So I guess my question, and this just could be because I'm, new and I'm kind of catching on to everything, but wouldn't we kind of refer to the city charter in this case? I'm just not understanding why this is amended.
So this is actually, wasn't this an addition? This wasn't, this particular, item I thought was an addition to something we did not have prior to.
Correct.
This one was added. This one
Okay.
wasn't.
is a order by
Initially in
the
there.
emergency managers.
Okay.
Okay.
Be truthful.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I don't think that we should continue to have the bickering that this right here has brought about when our city charter has made things very clear and very plain. And when it comes to these council rules that was put in place due to emergency management and trying to show the state that we could work together, which we have been doing all along anyway, I think that the whole thing needs to be dissolved and go back to the city Bible, which is the city of Benton Harbor's charter. I don't know why it came to be a problem with chair and vice chairs. Just like when you take off on a flight, you don't have a vice chair to take over for the pilot. It's a co-pilot. And if the pilot has to cancel out, his co-pilot should be able, I mean, that's what we're doing for Benton Harbor, are we not? Everybody has something to give. Everybody is working on something that they want to bring forth and get done. Why should my stuff be put on hold as a co-chair if my chair can't make the meeting? Just simply the things that he has on the agenda. If the city manager or clerk doesn't have anything that they're bringing forth that needs his attention, then we simply just put that off, he or she, until the next meeting. But somebody has put together a document that has caused quite a bit of chaos, and it has done nothing but given one person too much power, and it needs to end.
Well, we added the language of culture.
It needs to end. I'm asking this board to send forth a resolution to dissolve the whole thing and go back to the city charter.
That were asked of this committee were brought about by Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Henry asked about many of these changes, and so the changes that they inquired about is what we're trying to incorporate here.
And let me speak for myself.
Just a minute.
That was my initial.
These were the stuff that was given to me, and so based on that information, trying to rectify any issues or concerns that people had. So changing the vice to co, back to what that was something that was asked, and that is something that's being done. Being able to bring a resolution on the floor is one of those things that was asked. That's what's being done, and so there's still some issues, I guess. That if I'm understanding that she has
to dissolve the whole thing would clear it all.
But that's something completely different than what you asked
No,
for.
initially.
Point of order. There's a point of order.
If I may.
He has the floor.
Okay.
He has the floor now. Have a seat.
But no, ma'am. I may answer you because you brought me in.
No, after he.
You brought me in. You made a statement about something that I said.
Commissioner Adams pointed. Oh, I'm not here to argue.
I initially wanted the whole thing dissolved.
Okay, that's not what was brought to me.
And the same remains today.
That was not what was brought to me. It was not.
You were not paying attention.
I know you would know that. Go ahead.
You know it.
I'm trying to be quiet because I don't know what WNDU might be at tonight. So. The news media, so they say I'm chaotic. But anyway, just to the point of the clarity on the first change, I have no problem with it, but I do have some concerns. Just based on what I've seen in the past, we had very, very, very emotional commissioners who would bring 9, 10 things at one time to the agenda with no paperwork. I think if you bring a resolution from the floor at a city council meeting, there should be some type of documentation, because we spent almost half a night trying to just get wording correct for one resolution. So if, just as a courtesy, if people are bringing resolutions from the floor, at least have some documentation. Because again, and then there's no limit on it, I guess.
So we'll bring 9 at one night to add to the 9 that might be on there that night. And now we have a agenda of 18 items that nobody's ever discussed or talked about. Then that's the other part that we have to be so careful that if we are bringing something like that, that we have not violated the Open Meetings Act. We're already calculating votes or calling each other to find out, do you agree? Do you agree? Because once you hit that 5th agree, you done violated the Open Meetings Act. Well, you cannot,
Commissioner.
well, the question I have for to you, Madam Chair, is number 1, what is the original language in the ordinance about the chair and the co-chair, the vice chair? And lastly, I'll sit with this. Community economic development has nothing to do with the termination, I'm just using this for example, of the clerk. That should go to the proper committee, which is personnel and finance. We need to stop squeezing stuff on these agendas that don't have nothing to do with the committee. And then we will not have certain problems. I've never done it and I don't like it. So if we're gonna do that, make sure you bring it to the right committee, because you're a co-chair or chair don't mean you can bring park and recreation stuff to your committee just to push it up to the full agenda. That's not right. And it's not appropriate. So I just rest at that, but I want to know what the ordinance says, and is there going to be a limit on this thing? Because I don't want to be sitting here on Monday night and people bringing 9 items with no documentation. I've been here, sir. And
you have to respect
yeah.
the person's opinion.
That's why I left the last one.
Thank you.
The code of ordinances, as the current code of ordinances state, there is nothing in there that speaks to co-chair, vice chair. The only thing it speaks to is chairperson.
So are we adding to the ordinance? Chair?
Many of the stuff that you see tonight are things that were talked about and that were added. And so many of the items that were added, they weren't there. And so people were upset about things. And so as a way to rectify, I agree 100%. I don't agree with this. But at the same time, give the commission an opportunity to vote yes or no. I don't support it. But that does not give me the right to stop other commissioners who support it, and there was no reason not to have it. If it's utilized, as you're saying, in the correct way, there's really not a reason not to have it. I agree. We don't need to add 100 items on a Monday night or bring things from the floor, because we have the committees and there's ways to do that. So unless you have an underlying agenda that's not right, that is the only reason you would do, I feel, something like that. I could be wrong. So I don't agree with it, and I will not support it, but it does not give me the right to not allow the full commission to vote on it.
Can we define the role of the co-chair? Because what's going to happen is, and it's happening in my committee a whole lot of times, and other committees.
Finally show up to?
Point of order.
Oh.
Point of order.
Sorry.
Please, point of order.
The most
I understand this is a very passionate topic, so just point of order, please.
The most phenomenal part is that anything I ever put on my agenda, we got legs to it. I've had to erase so many items from my agenda that had no information. That is a waste of my time and a waste of the city residents' time to just put something on paper and you're not going to talk about it. So what I'm asking is that position needs to be defined.
So
who sets the agenda for the meeting?
So I would suggest putting a limit on items that you can add on a committee's agenda, because really to discuss, we had 4 or 5 items on the list tonight, and many of them, there were 4 items, but because of what they entail, it took a lot longer to discuss those items. So on a committee, I think no more than 5 items, and that's something that we can create
with paperwork.
with paperwork. I agree with something to discuss. if, the clerk knows, if you're bringing something to my committee, let it be in the form of a resolution, so we don't have empty discussions about things that we can't even vote on at the next committee.
Thank
Let
you.
it come in a resolution form.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, or Chair. I appreciate it. So the mayor, no, that's the last question. So does the mayor appoint the chair and the co-chair? From what that resolution is stating, or the ordinance said, so that the mayor has the ability to appoint both positions.
So the ordinance states that appointments are made by the mayor. This follows in line with what the ordinance says, that appointment of a chair and a co-chair would come through the same way.
So the mayor has the ability to appoint the co-chair and the chair.
Correct.
Thank you.
Like I said, through the chair, there's too much power, and this community has been watching exactly how it's been working. And as far as discussions, if we can't get together and talk because of the Open Meetings Act, when else can we have a discussion? And those that are interested in whatever topic or economic development that can come into this community, when it comes to whatever committee, whether it's discussion followed up by paperwork or presentation, show the respect to show up and do what the people elected you to do. Just that simple. And I don't think that the mayor should have as much power, one person that has one vote should have as much power that he has been exhibiting to this community. We don't have a president, we have a mayor. And each one of us had a voice and a vote. And I think that it would do us justice to go back to the beginning before we had an emergency manager that came in here and put a whole lot of things on us that are still dissatisfying.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And if we may, I'm going to ask again to dissolve this whole document and put our own together.
Thank you, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Two things. The first thing is the ordinance that this gets its energy from has been here.
How many years?
This has been here, God, since the ordinances were enacted subsequent to the passing of the charter. So it's been 100 and some odd years that the mayor has made the appointments per the code of ordinances. So that if you go back to that, you're still gonna have the same thing.
It was crooked, yeah.
It's the same thing.
Then why was that needed? Period.
What you have here, what you have is there are some things that aren't in the ordinance that are explained or further defined in this document. That's what it is. And honestly, it wasn't the emergency manager that put this together. It was an order from him, but it was given to the commission who voted on it. The commission voted on this. It wasn't anything that an emergency manager did. Yeah. So if it's something wrong with it, it's not because they did it. It's because it's not what you wanted, but you said yes to it. The commission, not you specifically, but the commission said yes to it. So if there's a problem with it, it needs to be fixed.
It was unanimous.
The commission can fix it.
It was unanimous.
Yeah, it was a unanimous vote.
Wasn't that a unanimous vote then?
It was pretty much.
It was a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
How many of those commissioners are still here?
Okay.
2 minutes.
All right.
I just say that, they changed the word to code, but put no understanding of what we really intended. We intended for the co-chair or the vice chair to work in collaboration with the chair, and be able to put things on the agenda. So this just changed the words to co-chair with no action.
Exactly.
So that it did not do what I thought was related to action as to how we solve the problem. The problem comes that nobody can put anything on the agenda but the city manager and the chair. And the co-chair has no power other than when the chair doesn't show up, the vice chair takes over. But the co-chair says there's a collaboration. There's not just a dictation. So this does not give any action whatsoever. The change from vice to co did not show our intent at all.
So I would even say with that, I know before these were completed, there were, I asked for any member to submit any changes that they would like, to have changed, anything that you needed to have changed in these particular ordinances. You asked me to do something, and that's what my attempt here was to do. And so if there were any changes, those were asked for. So if it's not exactly, did you submit anything to the attorney for changes? I actually,
to the attorney.
I serve on,
we couldn't even talk to the attorney.
I serve on 2 committees, and I have not had an issue with getting anything on the agenda. Commissioner Isom serves here. He hasn't had any issues with getting anything on the agenda if he wanted to, and I haven't had an issue with getting anything on the agenda that I serve with Commissioner Singleton. And there has not been any issues with getting anything on the agenda. So I'm kind of having even a difficult time understanding even why.
Well, that's not true. It didn't happen to you, but it happened to the other commissioners. And we saw a problem, and we're trying to fix it. And as you know, it's been through committee before. And it keeps going through committee. And as long as we don't have legal to help us, we're in a real hard place. So there was some intent to all 3 of those initiatives that was approved by the body. And this one with vice to co shows no action. And we need to correct it. We need to show what we really intended for that word from co-chair to do.
Google it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Why don't we take this back to the next
Excuse me,
one?
sir.
Oh, I thought you were done.
No, I'm not done. No, I just taken a deep breath.
That's all right.
Okay. And then there's some other questions I have about the other, and I was really hoping that the attorney was here to answer our question.
Intentional.
And I believe that was intentionally done to hold us off from this.
Again.
We've been seeing a problem with some of this since 2000. The year 2000, the body tried to correct this.
Is there another item on here? You said that you had another item that you want to address. Do you have exactly what you want with
I'd like to know exactly what it means when you say the commissioner, wait a minute, where is it? These guidelines may be amended by the city commission by majority vote.
Which one are you looking at?
Any proposed amendment, on page 15, any proposed amendments must be made and approved by the legislative committee and be supported by the specific language to be amended or deleted. Now,
That's what we're doing right now.
if we're gonna put it on the floor, why we wanna bring it to committee?
Okay.
That's around and around in a circle.
Let's talk about this resolution specifically. That's what this is talking about. Let's talk about just this.
This is, what this is talking about is, which one, which, you said, I'm sorry.
15, page 15, 1.
It says any proposed amendments
So,
must be
yeah,
made and approved by the
if-
legislature.
What it's saying is if you're going to amend this document, it has to be brought through the committee process and then given to the commission to be voted on.
To be able
I
to
got
support
Yeah,
it.
that's all it is.
I got you. Thank
Can
you.
you, so I guess,
Okay.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't wanna stop there. Why don't we, I think that if we're gonna start doing this kind of stuff, this code and making vice, I don't like the mayor pro tem title. I would change that too and make me the vice mayor, the co-mayor.
Oh, there you go.
And then we'll
It's a charter change.
What?
It's a charter
That's
change.
trying to change.
Well, I mean, why don't we stop it? If we got a problem with authority, why don't we don't stop there? We just make everybody co and do the chief like that, have a co-chief. And for the fire department, we just do everybody. Cause it's a problem with authority, that's what it is. There's no deputy directors nowhere. Let's just make it co everywhere.
Okay, point of
And then we'll vote on it as a commission and make it right. I think that's the best way to do it, because one person is having an issue, and it sounds like they're trying to say it's my committee, but y'all go back and look.
Please keep your questions addressed.
No, y'all go back and
You
look.
can-
Well, listen to this. Let me say this. There's been nothing that somebody's asked that had legs to it that I have not put on my agenda. Our agenda meetings, these meetings last too long about nothing.
like right now.
Cause some people like to talk.
You know, so, all right, so this is what we need to do. They said they don't like the word co, but because it's not defined. So why don't we remove that and bring it back and then define it by the attorney? Because they're gonna use some voting on it 2 or 3 times. Let's make sure we get the right language in there that's appropriate for this resolution or this amendment, and do it the right way with the attorney.
Save a few thousand, just.
And I would agree. Are there is wording that you want specifically for co-chair, or things that you want the co-chair to be allowed to do? Could you please write those things down? Because we can do that.
If you look up,
I know.
okay,
What,
if you
co
use
means
it,
and the word itself.
I'm
is co.
saying that the co-chair.
No,
should
it needs to be in writing, and so if we're gonna put it in writing, so that he can add that to what you're saying. It's one thing to just say that, but
Well,
you
look,
have in mind what you want. I don't know what you think.
I've been here for a long time, and I've seen a lot of things that work in this process. And of course, now we're working with a skeleton crew. They're not like with what we had before. But if I ask the city manager to make sure that that language expresses that the co-chair gets the opportunity to work with the chair and put things on the agenda. And if I call and ask the clerk to put dog poop on the agenda, and that we're gonna talk about an ordinance for dog poop, then he gets it at the same time that we get it. He has an opportunity, or he can get it before time. He has an opportunity to say, oh, that's ordinance so-and-so, and there's some background to it. Before the state came in, the background was given to us. Staff helped us create these things. And I think that that's where we need to go with some of this, because our attorney is just making money off of us. He keeps bringing back half stuff, and then you say go back and take care of it again, and he gets paid for it every time. Everybody knows what co means. If you don't, you can Google it or look up Webster. If you can't Google it, look it up in Webster. And it is a problem, and it's something that we need to fix. And we know who's been fighting it. The ones that are playing that part of dictator. They fight it. I can tell you what co means
So
to
with
us.
language, no, I know what co means, and so even when it was just vice chair, it didn't give any explicit orders or directions to the vice. It didn't say any of that.
I know, but that's fixing it now.
It
It
said
wasn't
committee
working
shall
in
consist of an
actual
appointed
practice.
Chairperson, city commissioners, and 2 citizen reps who shall serve for the committee appoints, including the chairperson, vice chair. It didn't give any explicit directions either way.
Yes, I understand that, but we're trying to do it now. put some words in it to make an action happen.
Why is it such a
It is a problem.
This understanding is the problem.
Alrighty, so that is number,
I'm tending to lean towards Commissioner Adams' suggestion.
dissolve it?
Dissolve it all and start anew. Because I'm probably the only one that was here
and voted on it.
that voted on
No. No.
it. You were here? Well,
Okay.
it makes no difference how many of
We've been
us
had,
were here.
right.
We still got 9 people that have an authority to do this, and we can do it. Especially when we
So
see that
I
there's
guess
a
at this point, my
procedure.
question is, you wanna add, the co-chair should be able to add things to the agenda. Is that what we're trying to do on 11?
To
I'm about
coordinate-
getting
to-
things done
yes.
and making it done, okay.
to
The co-chairperson can add,
Just dissolve it.
can add to the agenda.
can
Add
work
items.
with, what you gotta do is to have us working together as a body. Those 2 people should work together. They should not work
The term
independent of each other.
co-chair to me states that. If I'm looking at co-chair or vice chair,
You
it's
would think
supposed to-
so.
Without this explanation, so I guess I'm asking you, because you're saying without it being explicitly written, it doesn't work. So what do we need to add? Just like we just did a few minutes ago with the chief, he added and he changed stuff. So what
Okay.
what directly do you want added to number 11?
Okay. So I have it up on my phone, and I don't know if it's just gonna solve it, but it says co-chair is a person who is jointly in charge of something. So you just want that to be added.
And can be jointly in charge. Wonderful.
Jointly,
That was so simple.
Well, then,
The word co-chair is.
well,
No, the meaning
The meaning
goes
co-chair
with
is.
it.
jointly is the.
jointly
If-
is the
if,
question
um,
that they should be able to
Okay, let's go to
jointly
the
work
next one,
together.
because the time is,
I would
we have
like
a
to-
whole
I
other
would-
item, else we will delete that, go ahead now.
Are
Yes, could you add, what she just stated,
we need,
for co-chairperson, what their authority
It's
is?
jointly in charge of something, so they're jointly in charge.
Jointly in charge.
No big ass and little meaty.
Yes, we have a whole other item,
there's some more.
but each person was given this in a timely manner to say, let's add or let's change this. So now we wanna do it in this
We
committee.
don't have time to take care of people's
When we looked
business.
at it, no, it's about a time thing, you guys talk too much. So it's, you just said that, people talk too much, and that's what has happened. So we've come into this and we need to change this, just like we did with this other thing, and we haven't been able to do that.
Some things take longer
No,
to
that's not,
talk
so we
about
have
and
a whole
discuss
other
than
item. I can
others.
scratch this whole item and then we can do that.
I'm sure, that's why
The
you're
next
sitting
one.
there.
We can scratch this
That's
whole
why
next
you were
item.
placed there.
So,
That's why you were placed there, to do exactly what you just said.
Commissioner
been hard
Adams,
enough.
Commissioner Adams, you can be angry at the mayor for
Okay, I'm not
replacing you.
angry at anybody.
Be
I
mad
just
at the
want,
mayor.
I
don't
want
make that
things
decision,
solved.
remember? I'm not
I
the
want
mayor.
things
I'm
solved in
the
Ben
position.
Arbor.
I'm not the mayor.
I just want things
Wait a
solved
minute.
in Ben
I'm not the
Come
Arbor.
on, you guys getting
Go
on my
ahead, what's the
nerves.
next item that you like changed? Cause I'm just the
Solving
mayor, I'm not the mayor.
Hey,
I don't make
point of
appointments.
Not being the problem, but
I'm
solving
not the
it,
light on.
I'm not the appointment.
making stuff happen.
Yeah. Let's change. What else? What is the other item that you would like changed? Cause we've had these for at least a week now, and we could have done this.
I just like a clarity from, our city manager about the, 4th one on page 8. Exactly, I understand.
You got that,
Suspension of the rules.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, city clerk.
Jointly in charge.
Yes, thank you.
Suspension of the rules, council rules.
The sentence is, the commissioner shall state the proposed amendment to the agenda. Can you give me a clarity on exactly how this process, that part of it, will come in? And what is the, shall state the proposed amendment to the agenda?
If you have an agenda that's prepared and you decide and someone brings an agenda item on Monday, then what this is saying is, as I interpret it, that the commissioner has to explain the reason why, it has to explain the agenda, the item, what they're going to change. So if there's four agenda items, and so they're all for appointments, and someone decides that we're going to do RFP for finance because we've talked about that, then you would have to say, I want to amend the agenda to add that an RFP be submitted for a finance director. You have to state that. That's what this is saying.
I think we'd be very clear.
That's what they've been doing.
Nobody else be listening.
Making the request shall state the reasons or reasons for making the request.
Correct. So if you say, I'm doing it because it's an emergency, if you say I'm doing it because I just think we need to do it, whatever the motivation behind it is, that's what this is saying.
Okay. We got that?
The suspension of the council rules?
That's for the agenda.
Overall.
That's just for the agenda.
Okay.
That's not the rules.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we got to get to those.
That's on page 14 and 15. We just went over all of these very in depth. And let's go to the change.
What do we have
I guess
for the suspension?
I don't think Commissioner Adams heard it when you read it. Could you read it again?
It states that it can
No,
be.
the change, is that the change?
The change, I'm going to read what the change has been, what it was made to. That that the city's commission's policy and procedure can be suspended by any member of the commission. In making its motion, the commissioner must state the applicable section and subsection of the policy and procedure to be suspended. The commissioner shall also state the reason for the suspension of the identified policy or procedure. If the motion is seconded, there shall be no debate. The clerk shall then take the roll. In order to pass, the motion must be supported by a majority of the commissioners elected. Any suspension of a policy or procedure shall be limited solely to the commission meeting in which the motion was approved. The commission cannot suspend its obligation under state statute, charter, or ordinance.
Okay, that was the change?
That's what it's, because it wasn't there.
We
Okay.
added that.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was
okay,
not-
okay, and that was the main reason, because that's what our charter actually states.
The charter states what?
The charter states what?
Exactly what you just read.
That was something, this whole section we
Yeah,
added.
this is
We
all.
I
brand new.
inserted
Yeah.
this one because this
So
is what
we
the
good to
majority
go,
asked
as
about.
long as that shows up.
So now you want us to not talk because you don't want us to say what, this is what was added.
I'm satisfied.
This whole section wasn't
still
even here.
talking. I'm
This is
satisfied.
something we added.
Correct, this was added to the policies and procedures.
So we
So
must
what's that?
state the section and the subsection of the policy or procedure to be suspended. And that would be, if we're gonna suspend something, that would be the amendment of the agenda?
Nope. So here, I'll give you an example. Let me just, if you give me 3 seconds to do this.
There were 2 different editions.
I understand.
I'll give you an example.
2 different editions.
If you decided that you knew that this was gonna take a long time, a meeting was gonna take a long time, and you wanted to give, if you want, and you knew it was gonna take a long time because somebody had a presentation, and you wanted to extend it, you could say, fellow commissioners, I want to suspend whatever, I think this is whatever section it is. But number 9, time limitations for presentation, I want it to go to 10 minutes.
No further.
That's already there.
No, it says 5.
Well, it says that we can stay here until.
No. This is for in your policy. It says that the presentation is limited to 5 minutes at the mayor's discretion. Now you can say no. I want it to be 15 minutes. That's what we want. That's what we want to suspend right now.
Okay.
And then if you get a second, and then it's approved, then at that point it goes to 15 minutes.
You're suspending the
But
rules.
then the next meeting, it goes back to 5.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So anything that we see at that moment that needs to be done, we can handle our business and it'll go automatically back. So if I say, well, I don't want to talk about it.
So if you, and I like, I'm just going through, if you say on number 12 under decorum, it says Sergeant at Arms, the Director of Public Safety shall be the ex officio Sergeant at Arms of the City Commission. You can say, no, I want it to be the Finance Director. So you can pick, you have to identify what you're suspending to then identify it and make it, have it, a motion seconded and voted on.
We have a council.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it sounds like the suspension of a policy or procedure is what you're wanting. So I think we're good here, right? So the only issue, if I'm understanding correctly, and we've already addressed it, would be on page 11, and we're gonna add the role of co-chair, but it sounds like other than that, the only other comment I'm understanding is on page 8.4, is if we wanted to talk about how many items can be added. So I don't know if that's something we want to talk about. Other than that, I think everyone seems to be.
Right.
One no more than
What it was asked.
Never know what it might be.
I did exactly what I was asked. Go ahead. Question.
Just try to sound good, but I'm just trying to get clarification and say like, cause I know I've always been an advocate of being able to do business without a whole lot of hindrance. Say if, case like we had the sinkhole, you know, and some funds might need to be, that happened, you know, in between committee meetings and all that stuff. So say at a commission meeting, we said we wanted to allocate some funds for that, and it wasn't on the agenda, so you could, you know, suspend the rule, bring a resolution to the commission to ask that funds be provided for that. So in that case, do that fall up under what we just talked about? That's adding something to the agenda.
So in that situation, Commissioner Singleton, you already have a mechanism in your ordinances for emergencies like that. So if you change that to say that an emergency can't be acted on until the commission so sanctions it, then that means we gotta hold off till we convene you and then get the stuff done.
No, you could say if you did do it, but just to give it further legitimacy, that you can just go ahead, even though it's already done.
You've already, the Code of Ordinances already does that.
Yeah. Okay, let me give another example then. Say in the case where we felt that like the consent agreement with the DQ, that it was signed, but we believe that it should have been, done by a vote of the commission. And maybe it was some circumstances that it had to get signed or something or whatever. But to make it right, that could have been added to the agenda. Say, say we would like to add something to the agenda to get a better consensus of the commission to sign on behalf of the commission as a whole that legal binding document. So that would have rectified that instead of just leaving that out there.
That would have been at the will of the commission if that's what you had. So, and for me, what I see is something. For example, if there's a conversation at a commission meeting, something comes up that you want the attorney to do an opinion on. By your own ordinance, your own charter, the city commission can only act by resolution or ordinance.
Right.
So if you want to do that and say, we want the city attorney to look at the potential of what would happen if we had a change in the smoke ordinance, that would be something that would qualify for that, because it came out of nowhere through a conversation. Now you need to act on it, but it can't wait till the next meeting. Say it's 3 weeks between the next meeting, something like that, out of an emergency nature, because your code of ordinances outside of this has a lot of things in it that allow for situations that you don't have to have an action by the commission. So that's I'm just saying that what this did was took the code of ordinances and further defined sections that aren't in the code of ordinances. Because there's nothing in the code of ordinances about decorum. There's nothing in the code of ordinances about timelines on how long you can stay, how long you can be here. That's not in there. This does not define it. So if you remember back in the day when commission meetings would be till 11:30, 12 o'clock, that would happen. This limits it now, unless you guys approve it and say we're gonna go longer. Yeah. Yeah.
We have to suspend the rules.
No. Your rules say you can suspend. It gives you the authority to suspend it for the purposes of entertaining business that's on the floor at the time of closure. So you already got that. You don't have to suspend the rules to do that. You just have to say, our rules say, we can now say at the consensus of the commission, we want to go longer than 10 o'clock because we got some stuff we need to take care of.
No, it says we have to suspend
Right.
the rules. So there
Exactly.
should be a motion to suspend the rules.
I don't
And
think
it
it
has
should
to be a vote to suspend the rules. It says right there. And that's
Man.
why I
The
couldn't
motion has to be
understand.
made to suspend the rules.
Right.
In order to
Or may
make any
suspend the
changes
rules.
that are not-
Right. So you don't have to have a motion for it. You just have to say we want to do it.
We want to
So
suspend
that's
the rules.
anything.
No, that's this one, because it specifically says with that how you can do that.
Well, that's what I wanna see on anything. Anything that we want to suspend the rules for, this document should allow us to do it. Just like that one says, you suspend the rules if you wanna extend the time. I would like to see us suspend the rules for anything that we wanna do.
But your problem is, Commissioner, a lot of these have roots in your code of ordinances. And your code of ordinances says you can't just suspend them that way. You have to do it through a public hearing and notification to the people that you're gonna do it. So that's why there's a specific part here that talks about this, because that's not in your ordinances. The time of your meetings closing is not an ordinance issue. So that's why you got it here, to be able to suspend it for that purpose. But you can't suspend, for example, the order of the agenda, because that's in your code of ordinances. That's why you have certain ones that allow you to and certain ones that don't. Because this has roots in your documents that you cannot do that with.
So when we put it on the floor, that we wanted to give the attorney a 60-day notice, that was out of order?
And it
From the ordinance? Because he never did explain to me why that was not acceptable. It was voted on.
If my recollection of that was that it was not proper because it was not put on the agenda the proper way. That's what was said.
Now we have a mechanism to put it on the
anything
agenda.
on the-
Correct.
In the proper way.
That's correct.
He gave his own self an opinion.
Okay, now all of those things that were asked have been added. I'm not one of
And
them.
Honorable Chair, can I ask of you, because I do believe that these things need to be addressed on a timely basis. I think it's somewhere in here it tells us that a certain time that we really should be working on changing these or improving these or amending these.
So if you have any that need to be changed, just send them and we'll look at them. We'll have them look at them. If there's any other ones, other than the ones that you guys specifically asked me to look at and to include, if there's other ones that you want to address, that you feel like need to be addressed, please send those. And so they can be on the next agenda. Any of them, if you want to look at that. There's, nothing stopping that.
Okay. I would just like to say that nobody other than Commissioner Adams, while chairing any meeting, has had more respect for our city clerk's time, especially knowing that she's been here all day when putting forth business, which is another reason I think that a co-chair is good, because when somebody has something to do and they don't have time to take care of the people's business, there's another one to finish and follow up. Because something happened last Wednesday at an economic development committee meeting that was just totally out of order and a disservice to the people of this community. But that's exactly why, if the meeting's going too long for somebody, they shouldn't be involved. Because there's too much stuff that needs to be done around here in this little 3-4 square mile.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
You're welcome.
Let's go to the next item, which was the medical marijuana moratorium. I think that was the last agenda item. Was there a resolution for that particular item?
I didn't create a resolution, but we can create one. Are you interrupting me?
No, I'm trying to give you the mic.
Oh, okay. I've asked it to be put on the agenda because of a problem. It needs to be fixed. And the problem is that the people have agreed to have medical marijuana, not medical, recreational marijuana. And there is no rules. The state has not given us any rules as yet. But they did say that we could opt in or opt out. And if we don't opt out, we in. So we have not opted out. But we're working on the master plan, we're working on the zoning, and we're working on other things that will affect recreational marijuana. We can make the decisions on how it operates in Benton Harbor. And that's why I would like to put a moratorium of 6 months on it until after we get a chance to look at the master plan, look at zoning, and have a conversation about recreational marijuana and where we want it to be.
On what specific though?
Any and everything, because it's all new, and right now, I get a call once a week. We want to open up a shop in Benton Harbor. We want to do this. We have nothing to stop them. And they're coming. We have nothing to stop them. All they have to do is to go to inspection and say, I need a license.
Is there something against us being able to put a moratorium on?
Yes.
Is there something against?
Yes.
She's asking for us to do a resolution on a moratorium on what specific are you asking?
What does it mean?
We don't want anything to happen until we make the decision of how we want recreational marijuana to be processed or to be in our city. So it'll be zoning, it'll be what our master plans say, but right now we have nothing.
I still don't think I'm clear on what you're asking.
Well, ask me a question and I can see if I can clear.
Go ahead, Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think that you need to Google the word moratorium. And it temporarily suspends, or you can put a timeline on something. As it is, the state has enacted something. If you put a moratorium on something, it temporarily stops the process from that person over there that's sick, that has a card, that want to grow their own stuff. It eliminates all that, as well as some other things.
We're talking.
I think no. There's some things that our city clerk, I already knew it, but she actually gained some information that she was not privy to sharing because of the abruptness of last Wednesday's dismissal of a meeting that was very informative, or could have been. But I'm very aware that, and actually during the forum, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up for a minute. During the forum that Mrs. Swanigan of the foundation,
Yeah.
Sharp Foundation, and the sheriff and attorney, prosecutor Seppi had, as well as the forum that they had out at the health department last week. There are things that are already in place, and they expect for other people to follow them. And I can sell you this for $50. And if you want some marijuana, I can give you some and it's legal. But you're gonna pay me my $50 for this, or you're not getting it and I'm not gifting you anything. There's an exchange that's going on that's actually legal. Am I right, Officer Clark?
He wasn't paying
It is,
I mean,
it is a potential business, but
Yeah.
it is the opinion of the Bryan County prosecutor
Right,
that if you're caught doing it, he will prosecute.
exactly.
Right.
But
This is not-
if she may, let the clerk speak
So
to.
some of the clerks at the conference spoke about their shops in Michigan that are selling, just say, donuts for $50 and then gifting you marijuana. So, yeah, that's
Legal.
what's going on in Michigan. I
So
don't know
this makes no
how
sense.
they're doing it, but that's what they were speaking about.
Recreation.
Marijuana.
So
Yeah.
to the manager.
The people
she
have
talked about
spoken.
the moratorium. I don't
No.
exactly know on what.
What,
I don't
See,
know.
here's the other part of that too. If the city commission decided to ask for a moratorium on recreational marijuana, the people in the city can enact a referendum to overturn it.
exactly, we got no trouble.
Yeah, they can do that. That's one of the components of the recreational side. That wasn't the medical side.
Oh.
You can't, it would, in medical marijuana, you had to opt in and say you were opting in. In recreation, you have to say, I'm opting out, or you automatically opt in. Yeah, so it's just, they just flipped it. Yeah, it's.
You need to opt out.
If I may, Madam Chair.
But if you do, again, the people can overturn your decision.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
If I may, and I just want everybody, I wish that everybody could just open their minds. Everybody doesn't want this. I didn't want any parts of recreational, but I knew it was going to happen. Because there has always been a demand for it, and there's going to always be, and it's going to be the future pharmaceutical once all this other medication and stuff is out of the way.
Kill everybody off.
And I wish that we would think about how we can possibly contain the whole thing and allow somebody medically with the professional scientists and stuff that know what they're getting out of this plant and what to do with it and put how much ever oil in a substance to where it's not harmful. Because it does help pain, it does help asthma, it does help seizures, and so many other things. But we need to allow the ones that if we allow medical, let those be the ones that we allow to contain, I guess, recreational too, other than the ones that want to do their own thing in the privacy of their own home, of course. Because there's still laws that's going to come down on the both of them by the end of the year. And I don't think that we need to be doing anything other than, especially if something costs the taxpayers to have to put something on the ballot. Thank you.
I just think it's an economic development tool. And that our residents should have a first hand at it. The people with money are coming. The people with money are coming. And like when they called me and said, I bought this house on the corner over there, and we're going to dispense whatever the state of Michigan says we can, and whatever practice it is, that I'll give you an apple if you give me $50, and I'll give you this. Also, we need to put a handle on it so we can make sure that we know what we want in our city, where we want it, because right now, they can go anywhere, and if it's not on the ordinance that says they can't open the store up on the corner of Union and May,
and the city is the it's Ward 1, but it's particularly in our downtown area is where the restriction I thought was for medical marijuana in our city.
Medical is restricted to commercial and industrial right now. Medical is, and again, I'm a little novice on the recreational side, but I don't know if Deputy Director Clark has. I know he's been kind of following it.
It would fall under the zoning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
As far as I've been told so far, if you're going to open a retail business, it has to fall under zoning, and the LARA rules for the retail businesses won't be in effect until 2020.
Right.
And then there will be dispensary rules, and then also micro business rules.
Mm-hmm.
But that won't be until 2020.
Well,
So I think what you said earlier is that if what Commissioner Henry says, somebody buys a house on a corner in a residential area and opens up an unofficial micro business, the prosecutor said that they would prosecute that person if found out that something would happen. Yeah. So if they want to take that chance, you run the risk of going to jail. Unless it's a downtown, but then again, you can't. They're not giving us the ability to even regulate it until 2020. So we just have.
But we're a home rule community. We can put protection. We can put protection, and we can put guidelines to how much we want, where we want it, even before the state even gets involved in it.
But I don't think, Commissioner, that you can, without knowing what the state's going to do, and this is a hypothetical, I think right now you can have up to 2 ounces.
2.5.
2.5, okay. We couldn't say only in Ben Harbor you can only have 1.5.
No, we ain't talking about that.
No, I'm
We're
just
talking
saying.
about businesses and where they're gonna be and what they're gonna be allowed to do in our home rule community.
But so what I'm saying is, if like with the medical marijuana, it specifically said that growers could only be in industrial. That was the law. We couldn't allow them in any other place.
Well,
But we don't know what the state's going to say about dispensaries. We don't know what they're going to say about processors. We don't know what they're going to say about growers on the recreational side yet. That's what I'm getting at. We can make laws, but if the state comes out and says what you made means nothing, then we've basically gotten some energy behind something that we can't enforce.
So
I don't think that the state has that much authority on us if we are a home rule community and we put in things to protect us and sustain us, because that's what home rule is about. Sustaining, being able to sustain ourselves. So if we don't, we will have small businesses opening up and money is bringing them in. So we don't do it. We just don't do it.
quick question.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if my question would go to Officer Clark or City Manager, but I was just looking at the, trying to catch on what I had read. From my understanding, if you do a moratorium, then it will stop things. As it stands, there's a 3% sales tax on medical marijuana, 10% on recreational. But as the city manager stated, they haven't regulated that, or they haven't had a policy on that yet. But from my reading, when that recreational fully kicks in and they got all the I's and T's dotted and crossed, that the 3% sales tax for medical marijuana will be no longer applicable. So if you do a moratorium, it stops it, and then they all of a sudden come in, do we lose out on that 10%? If you throw the moratorium in, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to wait until the state make their
I wasn't proposing a moratorium.
No, I'm just asking the question, if that's what happens, will that, and the state comes in and say, okay, here's the rules for that. Do we lose out maybe, what can you say, a year penalty of getting started, or?
As it sits right now with medical marijuana, there is a percentage that's charged at the state, and then there's allocations to the local areas, and then it's a portion out of that. So if there would be a tax charged, please believe you and me, the state's gonna get the lion's share of it. We will get a very diluted amount that comes here. I don't know what that number's gonna be from the state. And the 3%, if they're saying that one of the things they're gonna propose to do is, if the 10% goes into effect, we're gonna attach it to both medical and recreational.
Right.
What that does is that's the 10% that the state's gonna get. So they're saying that now, instead of the 3% medical people that you're charging now, you gotta give us 10. And then they'll tell you what you get, like they did with medical. So yeah, that wouldn't do anything to us. If there was a tax on it that if we said we wanted to tax it at 20%, I don't think we can supersede the state law. We couldn't tax it at 20% saying that we're doing it because whatever the state's jurisdiction is.
So no matter what moratorium or whatever we do, it still can't exceed the 10%?
You cannot enact laws or anything that supersede or go against the state or federal or county laws. So if they say, you can't have medical marijuana shops, then you can't have medical marijuana shops. So, yeah.
No more questions?
Commissioner Henderson, do we move number 4 before commission, city commission, no amendments to the council rules?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
Twice.
Aye.
Aye.
Second. Aye.
We get like this,
Yes, sir.